Well, and I think that really plays out in the time and temperature in Tehran piece, and I think that that's probably what got under people's skin about that project, was that they were being forced to kind of contemplate something that was happening at a great geographic distance, at a great social distance, at a great political distance, that wasn't comfortable. So, like, I mean, I'm curious about the bank. Like, what were they complaining about every day?
Oh,
like,
God.
It was
anti-American, and it was, you know, why are you shoving that in our face? And it was, I thought that was so great. Because you could always, I could always just go back and say, it's a sign that tells you the time and temperature. Like, you were that upset. Like in essence,
it's pretty neutral. I mean,
it's a social mirror. In essence, it's obviously, I understood the context is the larger zeitgeist of what's going on geopolitically, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I'm not naive to that, but
that's why you put it there.
That's why I put it there, but it's still functionally a social mirror. I mean, it's like, it's flat. And if that can evoke such or disturb people so much, you know, what does that say about who we are? And how, you know, when people were like, this is our bicentennial, you know, this has nothing to do with Columbus. And I'm like, well, I think actually it does. I think how you respond to this says quite a bit about how we respond to things that are not. Listen, the whole bicentennial, or people invite you to do artworks that commemorate site and space and people, and it's all about, you know, celebrating these ingrained histories. And you know, we don't often identify ourselves in relationship to what we're not. And I mean, in terms of, like, you know, public identification, but we do in very negative ways oftentimes privately.
Right.
And so here, like, can we make that public? And can we embrace that, potentially?
Well, it also reminds me of something Emily was talking about last night about who gets to record what history is, and how that plays out when you have a public project, and how, you know, you kind of draw the, you know, when you connect the dots in a different order, people freak out in different ways.
Right, yeah.
So I guess that sort of takes us to the Palestinian iteration.
Sure.
With people freaking out. And there was this interesting. I was reading the interview that you did with Chelsea Haynes, and you said this thing that I thought was very important about when everything kind of went public, and when the Heinz Endowment kind of disavowed the project in this very specific way. You said, now I have no problem with outside organizations and individuals critiquing or challenging the methods of our project. That's part of the nature of making work in the public sphere. But I do take issue when individuals and organizations seek to police and silence speech. The counter to the call for less speech should always be more speech. And I just think it's something that we as a collective group of, you know, makers and producers should... Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want me to repeat the quote? I'll just read. But I do take issue when individuals and organizations seek to police and silence speech. The counter to the call for less speech should always be more speech. So, you know, I was reading this and I was thinking about the relationship also, you know, to what's happened recently with Conflict Kitchen, but also to Tanya Bruguera's situation in Cuba, where she continues to be detained, and kind of our collective need as a community of makers and producers to kind of to contend with that in very real and material ways. And so, you know, it's interesting to me that, you know, I mean, I love seeing that the community in Pittsburgh really came out to support you guys. But I wonder, you know, how you keep that conversation alive about artistic freedom of expression and this very unique idea that you had to kind of proposed to the Heinz Endowments that they should put a freedom of expression clause in their contracts. And I'd love to hear more about what their reaction has been and how that's going.
I'm not sure how it's going. I'm about to check back in on it. I did request that they and every other foundation here locally add... I mean, listen, it's a no-brainer. Like, for them, it completely protects them from all this else. They say, hey, we have a clause, sorry, whoops. This artist is going on, you might not like what they're saying, but, we've got this freedom of expression clause. It binds us, even if they don't like the art, right? Gives them an out from all the lobbying. And for the artists, it gives them, I was never consulted by the president of the Heinz Endowments before he made that statement. We're one of the local projects that's, made good. And, it would have been nice to know they've got our back. That it's actually when you give money to someone, I mean, are you starting a relationship or are you just throwing money out there? Yeah. What's being negotiated there? And can it just be torn asunder when influence comes in the way? And so, whatever. Yeah, putting a clause in there seems to be a no-brainer. It's like rocket science for these people to figure out how to do it, though. Yeah. They're just like, oh, God, no way, our lawyers are going to kill us, and there's, that's like crazy. Yeah. Like, that's so radical. I'm like, in the Constitution, don't we have, like, something that's been figured out before? You can't put in your fucking nonprofit bylaws? Like, so to me, it's a crazy disconnect between what's obvious and then the various real influences, and we've talked about it, that exist. And to be honest, around Palestine, not around anything else.
It's like the one issue.
It is the one issue. It's the one issue.
I think about that a lot, and I think about how I think about also the way that when sort of controversy strikes, that people who are embroiled in it retreat into their own sort of sphere of self-protection, particularly within institutions. And so often those communications and those conversations start breaking down at the inception of controversy. And so what's very challenging, I wonder what would have, there are always in these circumstances when you look back and say, like, I wonder what would have happened if they had picked up the phone and talked to you and picked up the phone and talked to a couple of other people. Maybe it would have turned out exactly the same. But I think that there is this kind of circle the wagons kind of impulse that people have, and that needs to get broken down in these kinds of circumstances.
You have to deal with it more than I do. I'm not, I'm still like at the bottom of the totem pole. I can do, and again, that's sort of privileged space to be in. But institutions, people whose livelihoods are really tied to funding mechanisms that hold powerful sway when issues like this come up. You want to live to fight another day. You want to do good work. The fact that Giant Eagle pulled out of the Sprout Fund is really upsetting in that the Sprout Fund does a lot of good work. They could have easily said, and they were very courageous to stand by the project, because they could have said, well, here's millions of dollars moving away that we could use for all of Pittsburgh. Or we believe in this thing, we're going to fight for it, and now we're going to have to struggle to re-fundraise to give money out to people that deserve it. And I feel, it makes me feel awful that they have to, deal with that. And other people have made decisions like, well, no, we're just going to sever ties and, and move on, and maybe to fight another day. The Heinz Endowments is a credible foundation. It does a lot of progressive work. The president of the Heinz Endowments, when I met with him 3 days later, sat down and said to me, I wanted to meet with you to see if you were a serious man. And I was like, you got to be kidding. And he said, he goes, we have this other grant that you got awarded, and I'm not sure I'm going to give it to you because of this. And it was so clear to me, like, that's so convoluted. Like, I already received an award, and he's thinking about taking it. I was like, please, take the award away. Yeah, like, it will be so good. Yeah. It will be so bad for you. And then please give me the award, because it's going to be so bad for you. Yeah. They were screwed, but he, was still trying to play this thing out. And it was a kind of desperate, attempt to rationalize the influence of the organization. The fact that, he said to me, Secretary of State's married to the trustee of our endowment. I would have never given you money if I saw your grant come through.
Which is completely untrue. I mean,
yeah, well, it's right. It wouldn't have even happened. So they're just, yeah.
But I think that also ties, obviously, to the point you made earlier about your own financial independence because of the way you're supported. And I think that's a key element, particularly in this circumstance.
Totally, yeah. I mean, really privileged to have that scenario and be able to keep making the work and not have to. You're talking like, people are like, "Are you worried about opening a Palestinian version again, or are you worried now about doing certain things?" And I understand people really do. Those are real worries, and people's livelihoods and careers, and are staked on situations that can be undermined. And we are in a fairly unique scenario in this, in that sense. So.
Yeah. Well, I think we're running a little short on time, so I think maybe what I'll do is I'll open it up to some questions, which I hope you all have. Go ahead. In the middle there.
You got yes on your phone? That's your ringtone is yes?
No, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it is. That's your ringtone is yes.
But my phone isn't ringing. It just started playing.
Then
How do I make it stop?
You can. Just put it up on the speaker.
Look and rock out. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were saying.
I was just talked about situations where people are being asked to do less rational negotiation, and how the foreigner project is one of those where having a different person than the person you're actually speaking to the body, the avatar, as you say. So I was just curious how you were thinking about, asking a white person to sit in with this other person versus the person of color, and how the person of color might create another layer of negotiation.
Yeah.
So just how you were thinking about that process and different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. So if you were there today, Tracy, who's an African-American woman locally, she's actually an amazing actress, was the avatar for Mohammed, who's Palestinian Arab. And yeah, I mean, in Pittsburgh, there's like huge issues around race in Pittsburgh, right? People think of Tracy based on her skin. Some, right, are going to approach Tracy with perceptions based on what she looks like. And I think that's, for us, that's an interesting thing to play with and to push at and to reposition. Sometimes it's gender, right? You have an expectation that, a woman wouldn't say certain things that a man would say, and, and they're happening. So we've played with lots of, age, race, gender. We've played with lots of combinations of that just to, I guess, kind of challenge the audience a bit, or the person who's engaging on their biases. I don't know if there's like a sweet spot in all of that, but it seems like an interesting area to kind of just, be playful with. And I think I addressed your question, I'm not sure.
In the back, and then Deb.
I wanted to know, so you said about 95% of the funding for Conflict Kitchen is actually generated through the business itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing it looks different with different projects that you've done. Do you have a business manager? Like, where did you get your business acumen? Like, I really love how you're like, I'm in a privileged position, because so often I hear artists talk about being in the opposite position, like we're supposed to grovel or ask for funding or fit ourselves into institutions that don't work. So I'm just wondering if there's a mindset that happened as well for you.
Slowly, I've been learning business. I mean, we don't have a business. We actually have a business administrator at the studio who kind of manages the payroll and stuff like that. We don't have like a business manager per se, but I'm learning business as I go, as well as Dawn, in terms of that project and other projects. I've been able to do things that use the university's resources and leverage them out into the city. So for a while, I was teaching classes just in storefronts for about 3 years, renting spaces, and the Waffle Shop project actually came out of that. So,
and some of your administration comes through the university, right? Or there's the for Conflict Kitchen.
For Conflict Kitchen, yeah, there's an admin person, right, who's just But we do all the legwork. So keeping the budgets in line, et cetera. I'm learning it as I go. But yeah, there's definitely being associated with the university is this extreme privilege, right? And the university has pockets and money and lawyers and folks that we encourage our students to use and to leverage as much as they can as well.
Steph?
Continuing off of that question, you make a really, really strong argument for economic sustainability equaling artistic freedom in a lot of ways, right? And I'm wondering if there's a downside to that, or if that ever goes away.
I wouldn't make a broad statement about that. I would make a specific statement in this for this project, because I think every economic situation has its own strengths, right, and own traps.
Are you missing out on anything in particular by being sustainable?
No, I don't think so. I'm missing out on being unsustainable. Which is awesome. I mean, the standard is well, here's the thing. There's a kind of noise out in the ether that says, oh, you guys are just making money. You're selling your food. And you're making money. And you're like, what? Like this expectation that sort of artistic authenticity is completely outside of any capitalist dynamic, and that you challenge every scenario and system simultaneously at once, always, and it's just naive. And I'm also interested in the project having existing in multiple realms and having multiple entry points. I mean, we're big in the food world. I love that, and design world, and news and politics, and so, and those are worlds that have economic mechanisms to them. Why not adopt them? Why not reuse them? So, yeah, I like not having to. I mean, frankly, we come up with a weird idea and we can do it. I don't have to ask anyone, right? Dawn and I, or Blaine, or Robert, or anyone who's involved, anyone in the kitchen, Isaac had an idea recently. We're like, oh, let's publish this. I'm like, okay, let's do it. We've got $1,000. We could do it. We just don't have to ask people, which is so rare. And it allows us, we'll extend the Palestinian version for as long as we want. We'll open a North Korean version, even though, frankly, we know we're not going to make a lot of money. There's a privilege. It doesn't mean we don't really deeply think about maintaining that sustainability because, we want to exist.
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, with the turmoil and kind of international recognition that you got out of what happened with you guys serving Palestinian food, can you just speak a little bit how the aspects that you've in a way benefited out of that, and the reality of that type of negative recourse giving you international press and that as a result catalyst for you having a better stance of what you do in a way?
I think the best thing that's come out of it, it's made us coming to Conflict Kitchen a more political act for people in Pittsburgh. That to me is the best byproduct. I mean, we actually had a fairly good international reputation. Surprisingly, people in other countries want us to set conflict kitchens up in their countries. But making what's at stake more visible and apparent to our community, I mean, this is really who we're serving. And so folks here, knew what was happening, right? They can't, it was playing out in the newspapers on a daily basis. There were lots of discussions and debates, and you're hearing all sides. And then, now to show up to the kitchen, that history is with us. And I think people, a lot of people don't know, but the people who do, I think it makes a more conscious act occur. And maybe, to be honest, Dawn and I always feel the project's kind of half realized. We always feel we could have sort of greater depth in our discussions, greater breadth. So in some ways it's accelerated that dynamic here locally. The international stuff, I don't know. That just is the noise that happens with you or without you.
So the woman in the blue, and then the guy in the green.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask a question and tell a little story to sort of connect to your experience working on the Palestinian conflict kitchen. So one of my questions was, did that experience make you and Dawn think again about how you approach each project? Like, is it going to affect future projects in terms of kind of rethinking like the long haul towards that,
Sure.
actually happening? And then second is just to say, I have a show about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict up right now at the museum I work at, and it's a project I worked on for several years, and nobody really thought I should do it, but I thought it was really important to me to have happen. We have about 1.6 million people in the PTI, or Piedmont Triad area, and about 1,000 to 2,000 of them are Palestinian, and then there's about 10,000 people in the Jewish community. And there wasn't a lot of awareness of the Palestinian community, and the project that I've done has really raised awareness, which just makes me really happy, especially as for me, because I didn't even know how strong of a community there was that was there. But I did have these experiences that were really almost like Twilight Zone moments in the lead up to the opening of the show, because I did a lot of community outreach because everyone was like, I don't know if you should do this show. And luckily I had a director who was supportive, who was like, I think you can do the show. So, but one of them was meeting with the head of the North Carolina Conference for Community and Justice, who's like super lefty, liberal, working on all these social justice issues, and having a conversation with them late into the game after I had had many conversations with different people from different parts of the community, and realizing in that conversation that actually she was getting angry about the project, and me being completely shocked. Like, I was really blindsided by that could happen in that context. So that was, I think, probably the strangest thing for me, was understanding that even very left-thinking, liberal people were going to come out against me presenting these artists who were addressing these issues. And because I think a lot of people, they hear it and they think it's more like the right, but it comes from the left. Like, that's where I got it the worst in my community. So I just wanted to ask you to address the first question and also talk about that strange flip that happens when you think, oh, this person will understand, and then you realize, oh, no, I'm not completely.
I mean, the issue around Palestine, right, has strange bedfellows. I mean, as we're seeing, play out with what's, with Netanyahu and the GOP. And I mean, my family, my sister won't talk to me about it, other cousins who can't believe what I'm doing, whatever. And who are progressives, liberals,
Yeah, on
every other issue. There's a term called, I don't know, someone told me that, like, PEEPS or something. It's like progressive except for Palestine. One of my peeps. And that makes it a huge group, right? If it crosses into the liberals. I mean, to be honest, there's a bastion in the art world that's the liberal, progressive art world tends to be supportive of, Palestinian rights. And so and I think that, Emily talked about the BDS movement and how things have changed in the past 20 years, and I would like to think that, art world and the academic world have helped. But in the academic world, it's, right, progressive academics, you can get into some deep trouble with. So the art world is a kind of special case. But, of course, if you're an institution, you're putting on an event, and you have funders and constituents, you can get it from all sides. So will that affect us? No. No, not at all.